A few months ago it was my birthday, and due to the nature of birthdays, you actually think about how your year has gone and how it's going. And as you get older, I don't know if it's just the nature of time, it starts to feel like it's getting faster. And as I look back, there's definitely a gradual evolution in the way of my thinking. And I feel like in my early 20s I was fumbling through life, and throughout my many experiences there had been difficult times, and I had just been doing what I thought was right. And I think I've been through a fair amount of things, and as it stands now, I've created a career that I enjoy and I like. I've travelled a fair bit and I've met a multitude of different characters from all walks of life. And I think it's safe to say I think I've actually learnt a few lessons along the way. And as I said before, I think my way of thinking now has been a continual process. And it only becomes clear when you sit down and actually think about it. People will come and go, and I don't know if it's just me being sentimental. I don't really like the idea of people kind of coming in and going out of your life, but I've come to the realization that those that are around you may not be the ones that are gonna ultimately stick around forever. People may come in seasons. Not everyone that you start with will finish with you. Not everybody that you fight with is your enemy, and anybody that helps you is not necessarily your friend. And I think that's actually a Mike Tyson quote, if I can recall. And I kind of like it because I feel like we go through many journeys as we get older. You study in uni, you start your first job, maybe you go traveling, and I feel like you build friendships along the way. Some will last, some won't. Some will be in your life for maybe a few months or so. But I think knowing that, I think it's all more important to try and maintain those relationships where you think they have value, because it's so easy just to kind of fade away and lose contact with people. And I always used to have that sense of people will always stick around. And I don't know if it was just me having good faith in people, but that doesn't always necessarily happen. Sometimes life takes over, sometimes they start a family, sometimes people just move away or into a different area and it just becomes more difficult. And I think I came to the realization that you never realize the last time you're going to speak to someone or do something with a particular person. And that thought actually is gut-wrenching, especially if you know you get along with that person. There are moments right now or periods right now where it's probably going to be the best moments of your life with a particular person or a group of people. And I guess knowing that being forever present is so important. I remember many years ago watching a weight loss program of a person who was just clinically obese, and a doctor said to him, "What do you eat?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't eat that much." And he just quite blankly just said, "No, this is years of bad habits. It wasn't just one meal that got you to this weight. It was years of snacking and just eating bad things." And he said everything adds up. People just don't reach a weight overnight. And that really did stick in my mind. And I think that happens in life also. Things just don't happen. Wherever it is, it's an accumulation of things. Maybe it's a week, month, or year. And if it's bad habits like overeating, they compound over time to a point where they just stare you in the face. Your reality is there in black and white. And I think culturally we have a tendency to always look at the success stories and look at the end point. And that's something I probably did a bit too much when I was younger. I would try to look at people's success stories and maybe try to emulate that when that's not really realistic. Everyone has their journey and everyone has their own unique way of getting their outcome. And focusing on the outcomes is not necessarily the best plan of action if you're wanting to do something. The logic makes sense, but that's not necessarily the reality. And I actually have an amateur boxer friend, and he was talking about going pro. And he said to me, by the time you're watching someone on the TV and they say they've got, I don't know, 12 knockouts or 12 wins or whatever it is, they just haven't had 12 fights. They've probably had hundreds of amateur and sparring sessions in order to get to that level. People are essentially joining this person in the middle or towards the end of their journey. And even now, I need to remind myself that everything adds up. Every rep in the gym adds up. Every time I go out and I do something that's going to be productive for this YouTube channel is a step in the right direction. Because I may not see the benefit today or tomorrow, but I will see it. Stop buying stuff. Oh my god, I would spend so much money on just trends. All these fashion brands that really bring out stuff seasonally and it's quick fashion. And when I think about it, I probably spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on clothes that I don't own today. And I've probably given them away, thrown them away, or they've ripped too easily because the quality's been garbage. And that's one thing I wouldn't do now. I try to opt now just for simple clothes where they're kind of timeless or pieces that I can just wear over the years. Sometimes we have this tendency to just want to accumulate more and more and more. And it feels nice in that moment, in that, especially when you're opening the package of whatever you've bought and when you're wearing it for the first time. But that moment is fleeting. It doesn't last. And I would tell myself not to get sucked into buying stuff to impress people who you don't know, and not getting myself into debt, but just wasting money, because yes, they may be gratifying, but I couldn't actually afford it at the time. Having nice things are nice, but that's the thing, it's just nice. It's not an essential thing. And I remember I would spend hours just searching and deliberating, should I buy this, should I not? And it was time, it was money, just wasted. Now I've had probably my most happiest moments, I would say, traveling. And unbeknown to me, it's been on the trips where I thought that they weren't gonna be amazing. There were trips that I'd underestimated from the get-go. But those trips, I don't know, did something. They kind of made me feel like the world is bigger. There's a lot more to see out there, you know? Especially when you can maybe learn the language and speak to a whole different demographic of people. And essentially you're investing in yourself. You're investing in these like memory dividends that can later repay you in kind of happiness withdrawals when you think about them. Because at the end of the day, not everything can be measured by a monetary metric. And I would have doubled down on just traveling. Because one thing I definitely realized, where there's definitely places where they work to live, they don't live to work, you know, and there's definitely a difference there. And what I mean by that is that they see a job as just a means to an end, you know. For them, family, enjoying the quality of life is much more better than just the accumulation of wealth. Yes, earning a big salary is good, but I think the satisfaction is up to a certain point. I think it's around £80,000 where your actual level of happiness doesn't actually change. As long as you can provide for yourself, you've got shelter, you've got food, it's like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Your happiness is not actually going to change all that different. And I remember going to Spain and I remember meeting new people for the first time, and none of their questions was to do about work or any type of sort of, oh, do you own your house, or do you rent, or what type of job do you do? It was nothing like that. It was all questions like, what's your family like? Do you have any brothers or sisters? What do you like to do in your spare time? Do you like sports? They really wanted to know you as a person. And that made me think, like, my work doesn't actually define me. Whatever you do as a 9 to 5 doesn't define you as a person. And here in the UK, that's something that we lead with. Probably it's the second question people will ask you if they meet you, oh, what do you do for a living? And it's such a surface level and superficial question. When you think about it, it's lazy. It's not even, have you really even thought about it when you're actually asking that question? Do you even care? You probably don't. And it kind of feeds into this type of comparison game that we all do. And you kind of indirectly judge that person differently. Yeah, I've definitely got a bit off topic there, but yeah, I would travel more because it just expands your way of thinking, it expands your thoughts, and it gives you a wider vision of just the world and your scope of conversations that you can have. It's never too late to change careers, and this is something that I've done quite recently. And I think when I was younger, you definitely fall into the trap of thinking you're going to be in this place forever, especially if you hate the job. And I think it's definitely important to remind yourself, and if I could remind myself back then, that where you are right now is not where you're going to stay, and it's not where you're going to be forever. And when I think about it, what makes me laugh about the education system is that when you're deciding for a degree or your career in your early 20s, you're signing up for huge amounts of debt. And these decisions, I think, shouldn't really be taken lightly, because effectively you're saying, this is what I want to do, you know? And there should be a way that we can try and maybe test it, which is probably why people take gap years, or if they can, or if they're lucky enough, they can do some type of internship. And I know it's scary to feel like you can't change, because we tell our friends and our families that we're going in this direction, and essentially you've told the world, yes, this is what you want to do, and it looks a bit silly changing. But we shouldn't have this fear, because I know many people who have changed their careers over the years. I definitely had this rigid thought of having to stick to something. And there's definitely value in sticking to something, but then there's value also in knowing when to quit. So I guess it's finding that balance. Nothing is set in stone, and life is fluid. And so should your decisions be. They should change in order the way you think also. They should account for the various things that are happening in your current situation. You should have this sense for your adaptability. It's never too late. It's never too late to change. I realised when reading articles, you never really hear the good news stories. It's always the negative. Why is that? Because they're an extreme, and it makes people read those stories. And it's easy to read or listen to these negative kind of stories and articles. And the reason why I'm saying this is because you can get into a habit sometimes of falling victim to believing that the world is set up in a way where it's against you and nothing's working out because it's a conspiracy or someone hasn't given you the chance, when in reality it's not that way. It's the way you are seeing things. You can either see the glass half full or half full up, and I do fully believe that. You all have a choice, and that choice will dictate what direction you go in. You can make a choice to feel like you're part of the victim mentality, or you can make a choice to feel like you have an opportunity. And there have been many times in my past where I definitely thought things were against me at a certain point, and I would tell myself to get up, to get out of that frame of thinking, to remember that your actions consequently brought you to where you are right now. So where I was back then brought me to that point because of my actions that I had made. And ultimately, it's my fault. You know, you can't blame people. Things happen. Yes, bad things happen. But ultimately, it's where you go from there. How do you treat challenging moments? Do you treat it in a way where you can learn a lesson, however painful it may be? Sometimes things can be so much so where you feel like you've been hard done by and you feel like you've done everything right, but within that there is something you can learn. There is something you can take from that. And I don't know how I came up with this analogy, but I feel like opportunities are like stones at the bottom of a seabed. You need to be able to swim deep to see them. On a surface level, you may see a shimmer, you may see a shape of something, but you need to make that effort to swim down deep in order to seize it and see it and grab it. In my mind, my parents are stuck in time at this particular age, and when you don't see them as often, and then you see them one day and you notice a grey hair, and then notice another grey hair, you suddenly realise that they're getting old. And you may have some tragic events that happen where people pass away, and it reminds you that your time and their time is finite. And depending on your relationship with your parents and family, you may not have had certain conversations. We didn't necessarily have as many casual conversations as we do now. It's something that I'm trying to maintain, and I wish that I had started sooner. And yeah, it's important to remember that your parents are human beings also. They may have made mistakes, they are fallible, and at the time they probably didn't know what they were doing, but they did their best. Whatever has happened, I do feel like you only have one set of parents, and there will be a day where you wished that you had spoken more or been a bit more kinder to them. Anyways, I think that brings me to the end, and yeah, if you found value in this, please comment below. I'd really appreciate it. If you like this video, smash that like button. And if you want to see my ugly face again, subscribe. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.